So your days growing up in the loving cradle of Sunset Bird came to an end. In the years that passed since graduation, you moved out of your childhood home and made your own way in the world. You lived with you lived alone, and you worked at a fine company in the music industry. Your family members went through the same kinds of leaps into independence. Liz and Lee both eventually earned degrees and started fantastic careers in new towns. But your mom's and Cove's father still lived on the same street as they had for all those years before. It was comforting you that there were some things that remained in the old neighborhood. And despite the ever-changing reality of your adult life, your friends were still your friends, though of course things weren't exactly the same for them either. Very recently, Terry publicly came out as a man and switched the spelling of his name to use a Y instead of an I. He also confessed his love for Miranda, which she excitedly reciprocated. They moved in together recently in a city out past Sunset Bird. One person who did disappear into the shuffle of memories inside your mind was Baxter. After his vacation in Sunset Bird one year, he was just gone. That was a loss you felt. You had become someone you'd considered a friend during those days. And then there's what became of a sad little boy you grew up with, Cole Holden. Of course, he was still a very important person in your heart. Cole was a friend you could count on. And luckily things worked out for the two of you to still live pretty close by. He truly thrived in his continued efforts of cultivating love and supportive relationships with his family and friends. His personality changed, becoming more reserved, though not at all unkind. Cole was a gentle, loyal, considerate man who took the lessons he'd learned over the years to treat the people around him with patience and understanding. When Cole eventually developed a picture of the future he wanted to have as an adult, it made perfect sense to you based on his interests. Cole got a 2-year degree. After that, he began working full-time at Orca, helping educate the public on ocean conservation and participating in shore restoration efforts. As an adult, Cole also was able to recognize and have this diagnosed that he was on the autism spectrum. It was something that hadn't been noticed by his doctors as a child, but he was still the same Cole he always was to you, and he was just glad to understand himself better. It thrilled you to see how happy and successful he'd grown up to be. Growth and change came for the Suarez family as well. Mr. Suarez continued to run the scuba shop with Mr. Holden, but that was about the only constant that remained. They moved to a new condo in Prism Vista City as their 3 boys got older and the nest began to empty. The baby of the family, Nicholas, was eventually the only one left at home. George went off to a local college, staying in the dorms. Then there was the eldest son, Derek Suarez. He left the area years ago to attend an out-of-state college on a sports scholarship. You kept in touch with him during those days as you had in the past. Derek had since graduated. You were sure he would have success in whatever he pursued. The long-term direction of his career going forward was ambiguous to you, but there was still news Derek had been able to share. He was returning to the city where he grew up in, and as always, Derek had a plan. The foggy of scratched glass door of the bus swung open with a gasp of air, allowing you and the rest of the passengers to disembark at your destination. You stepped from the massive vehicle in the Prison Vista City bus station. Crowds of travelers bustled across the concrete floors. A constant stream of strangers came from the hallways, shuttles, and other buses. The station was absolutely packed. It was vacation season. Summer had only just begun, but the California heat was already a mess. You'd be lucky if you even single day of your much anticipated trip was under 90 degrees. Arriving was still a great relief. Steaming in the humid bus station was definitely preferable to barking inside the metal walls of the bus itself. It was a fairly short ride over, but still. You didn't have your own car because it wouldn't be even more inconvenient. There was no way around the bus ride. You didn't own a car and couldn't drive places yourself. But Derek had his own car, so that would be your last bus ride until it was time to go home. One of your sweaty hands kept the slippery grip on the handle of your rolling suitcase. It was a well-worn piece. Frayed at the edges and with an annoying loose wheel on the left side and that dared you to try keeping it moving in a straight line. You'd had it since you moved out of your mom's house, and now it was returning with you, at least to the general places, since you wouldn't be staying in Sunsetburg. Your accommodation were there in the city. All you had to do was inform your old friend Derek you were ready to be picked up. And so, in your other hand was your unlocked phone with the contact screen up. You selected Derek's name, saw the last thought he had sent you, and texted him a quick message. Good luck on your trip. Let me know when you come by. I'll be ready for you. Hey, I'm here. You scooted closer to the wall, positioning yourself out of the path, but in the place that was still easily visible. It took only a minute to get situated, and your phone was already buzzing with the response. Coming. You cracked a smile at the screen of your cell and the brief message that it lit it up. Then you put it away. He'd be there soon. There wasn't much else to do besides watch the tide of people go by and think, Recollections of how you ended up in that spot came to mind. The two of you had consistently kept in touch. He knew what was happening with you and you with him. For the past months, the catch-up calls and texts you had with Derek included updates on his process of moving. He decided to head back to the city, at least temporarily, to help his dad with his business and work some things out for himself for his own future career prospects. Derek kept you in the loop with his house hunting, logistics, and the victories and the setbacks in making a major life transition. It all came together less than a month ago. The Suarez family was naturally thrilled to have him there. George already lived near, only 40 minutes away, and Nicholas was still at home, so the whole team could be together again. The biggest brother was just happy to return to his own stomping grounds after all the years of being away, but it wasn't a familiar local for only him. Sunset Bird was the next town over. He knew that. Derek's deep voice played inside your mind. The animated way he spoke through the phone a few weeks ago was fresh in your memory. He talked about how he made it to his new apartment with an extra room and that you should totally come to stay for a while. You'd be able to visit with his brothers and parents and your own parents in your childhood neighborhood, and you'd get to see him too. Finding a hotel in the area was always the biggest problem of coming back home. You had to appreciate the unique opportunity Derek had provided. Though, even if he had lived on the opposite end of the country, you would have tried to make it. He meant more to you than just a couch you could crash on. Seeing Derek was your main priority for the trip. You both worked it out so you could be there. Unfortunately, the other good pal from your youth couldn't make it. Cole Holden. He pouted a little about not getting to see Derek or return to Sunset Bird with you. But he recovered. Especially because he would be coming later that very summer. He simply wasn't able to do it twice in one season. You'd be with Cove then, and Derek would still be in town too. This time, though, would be bonding time for you and Derek. You were looking forward to the trip as much as you knew Derek was. You could already imagine his bright face grinning at you. Those idle thoughts led to idly checking the time on your phone. It'd only been about 5 minutes since you sent the text. You put your phone away yet again. It was the grand tradition of being in a bus station, waiting somewhere, checking the time, then looking around. You went back to the third step. Throughout the spacious area, there were plenty of other travelers repeating the exact same process as you. Other than the people filling the space, the scene was virtually unchanged since the first time you'd seen it. You could easily recall the exact day that was Father's Day when you were 13. Derek had been so thoughtful, inviting you to go over to his house so you wouldn't feel lonely for the holiday. He didn't make you go through any of it on your own. It wouldn't be much longer until he was by your side again. Just thinking about it lightened your spirits. And then over the murmur of the bustling crowd, an echoing beat pounded through the air. It was the sound of rapid footsteps against the solid station floor. Pushing off from the wall, you scanned the crowd for the source. It didn't take an I Spy champion to notice the man in a bright sleeveless sweatshirt sprinting towards the bus landing area like he was about to miss the last ride of the day. But he didn't have a map, bags, or a ticket in hand. He wasn't there to go anywhere else. He had somebody to see. And that was you. Derek had made it. He neared the drop-off spot while swiveling his head. When his gaze fell on you over to the side, his mad dash abruptly came to a stop. Derek was a solid rock in the middle of a slow-moving river of unfamiliar faces. He'd grown so much. A sparkling grin broke through the stillness. The part of him hadn't changed. 10 years older, but with just as much boyish charm as ever. You ran towards him. With your suitcase rattling behind you, you pushed through the crowd. Derek turned on his heels to change the trajectory of his path. He took bounding strides to close the rest of the distance between you and him. You met partway across the station, let go of the bag, and opened your arms for a hug. Derek didn't miss a beat and scooped you up in a warm embrace. It was a wonderful start to the reunion. Then he released you from the hold.
It's been a while, huh?
It's been a while, huh? With the man himself right in front of you, it was possible to appraise him fully. Your former match in height or lack of height had left you behind. For the first time, you had to look up to see his face. I can't believe you're taller than me. I am? I didn't notice. He was beaming. It was obvious he had noticed, but thought it'd be more polite to pretend. It's good to see you. Derek watched you so gently, his words couldn't ring anything but true. Setting his eyes on you was something he was grateful he could do. And hearing him call you by that long-time moniker really brought it home that you were, well, home. The feeling's mutual.
You ready?
Nice. You ready to go? Got all your stuff? Yeah, it's only the suitcase. Which way are we going? That way. Oh. Derek rubbed the back of his head as his immense chair chipped away just a bit. Do you mind having to take a stroll? I didn't bring the car. My place is about a 15-minute walk from here, and parking is wild. I would have had to park 20 minutes away just to find something outside of the apartment's reserved spot. That's one thing about this place I didn't miss. He let out an airy chuckle, still awkwardly scratching at his hair. So, we're gonna have to get it some steps. Honestly, it'll be nice to move around after that bus ride. I get that. Oh, but... You pressed a finger to the tip of your chin, thinking. You got here way sooner than 15 minutes. It was barely more than 5. Yeah. He attempted to shrug casually, with a smirk tucked at his mouth. It's
Well,
15, it's 15 if you walk. It goes quicker if you run. Especially when you're a fast runner, like if you're a trained athlete, for example. Derek jumped in place to spread his feet apart and strike a superhero pose like he was still a 13-year-old. I hope you didn't push yourself. Or, thanks for going to the trouble. He fed off your praise and lifted his head even higher. It was nothing. I didn't even feel it. Once again, completely carefree, Derek tilted his head over the way he came. Let's go. You reached down to collect your suitcase, only to grasp empty air. You glanced towards the ground just in time to see it rolling away, securely in Derek's hand. A gentleman as always.
you know.
Got it. You took his free hand. Derek had his plan, and you had your own. You maneuvered to the side and slipped your hands around his.
Oh.
For an instant, he flinched at the touch, but you held firm and he eased into it. I see how it is. I'm pulling the bag, but you're pulling me. Yep. I can never beat you. You and Derek left the station side by side and your way through the vast city. He pointed out a towering building against the skyline in the distance. It was sparkling and new and had to be at least 10 floors. That's where you were going. Having such an obvious landmark to work towards was convenient. You weren't familiar with that part of the city. The condo where the Suarez family used to live was further away from the station. It was certainly very different from Sunset Bird. You easily knew every corner of the town and could go from end to end on foot. But you continued along, certain that you'd make it to your destination. Derek's pace wasn't too fast or too slow. He was conscious of the connection between you and wasn't going to jerk you around. Derek chattered lightheartedly as your thoughts were drifting away. It felt completely natural being there with him. He didn't struggle to let you into his world. There was a place he'd left open and waiting for you. Derek Suarez, his name rang in your ears. Over the years, you cherished him even more until you couldn't imagine life without him. Despite how long it had been and despite all the time you had to spend apart, your feelings never wavered. You were in love with him. The jaunt through the city breezed by. There was so much to catch up on. Even though you didn't sprint, the 15-minute walk still felt much closer to 5. When you arrived at the ground floor of the skyscraper Derek lived in, he showed you right up. At his front door, Derek fished the key from his sweatshirts. He swung the key on the silver loop around his fingers and joked about his near disaster from earlier that day. He'd run straight out of his house once you texted, and he'd already hit the button for the elevator when he realized his apartment was left unlocked. Derek had to bolt back down the hall as the elevator arrived, locked the door, and made it back to the other end before the elevator closed, but he'd made it. You quipped that being on such a high floor really came in handy. The elevator had a longer way to go and gave him much more time. Derek nodded with a laugh. Welcome to my house. Derek's apartment was a modern but still cozy space and completely spotless. A balcony wrapped around two walls of the adobe. Through the crystal clear floor to ceiling windows, you could see the ocean.
What do you think?
It's looking good already, huh? Too bad I didn't put any of it together. It came furnished. None of this is yours? Nah, I didn't have a lot of important stuff in my old place. Nothing worth bringing all the way over. And who knows how long I'm gonna be here. Getting new things didn't sound like a great idea. We'll see what happens long term. I might stay longer than I think. Still, at least for now, a prefab apartment it is. It's wonderful. Thanks. Glad you think so. You're living here too, for a while, at least. Glad you think so. You're living here too, for a little while, at least. Derek cast his gaze over the room like he was meeting a friend. It had made a good impression on you, and that had him standing proud. But he cut himself off and focused his attention back on his actual guest. You can have my spare key while you're here, and I'll show you your room so you can put this away before we get distracted. That was said while Derek lifted up the suitcase he insisted on carrying. You mean so you can put it away? I'm not the one holding it, remember? Right, I've got it. You were led towards the narrow hall at the side of the apartment and stopped right at the first door in the path. You'd arrived already. Derek opened the room for you, holding the door until you passed through. You enter your temporary bedroom. He followed you inside, still tugging the suitcase behind him. The furniture style was perfect match to the living area. It was easy to see that it had come as a full set. Derek set the bag up against the corner of the bed to keep it out of the way. Man, it's incredible that you're here, especially now. George and Nicole are both on summer vacation. They're super looking forward to see you. Can you believe that they're gonna be juniors next year? George for college and Nicole for high school, obviously. He spoke with an affectionate enthusiasm. We used to babysit them, and now they're practically scholars. Not to mention the fact that George outgrew me. I bet in a couple more years Nicholas will too. So much for being the big brother. It was a blow to Derek, but he took it on the chin and snorted in good humor. You'll always be their big brother no matter how tall they get. Yeah, that's true. It was a ponderous thing hearing about other people getting older and progressing in life. Little George and Nicholas had grown up so much, but the same number of years had passed for you and you were older than them. You were an adult with a full-time job and a place of your own. You were doing just as well as you aspired to. But you still felt like you were a teenager rather than a real adult. You weren't sure you would ever reach a point where you saw yourself as completely grown. A pause had formed before you realized it. You blinked and brought your mind back to the present. Derek offered an understanding smile and then spoke to give a different type of offer.
So?
Wanna see the rest of the apartment? I'll give you the tour. Yeah, that'd be great. You casually went through the still open bedroom door and Derek shut it behind you. The grand tour of the Derek Suarez local was started immediately. You got to see the scenic guest bathroom with all the amenities, and he showed off the vast end of the hall with a closed door. Anything could have been beyond that point. Your helpful guide informed you it was his bedroom. Isn't it crazy, having the master bedroom at the end of the hall? Sometimes I still look down there and think that's gonna be my mom and dad's room. You're moving up in the world. You and Derek strolled back into the main section to explore the dining area and the kitchen. He described the treasures hidden inside each cupboard, and you even got to check inside the fridge. It was difficult to pretend the contents were part of some tourist adventure experience. The only things there, spread out sparsely among the shelves, were water bottles, colorful sports drinks, a jug of 2% milk, a box of salad greens, and a few containers of some kind of packed meals. Derek awkwardly cleared his throat, feeling as if he needed to explain the sight in front of you.
Oops.
I don't have much in stock right now. I usually eat at my parents' place or get takeout. I'm on vacation, sort of, a working vacation. But I should change that, especially now that there's somebody else here. He swung his arm to the side to close the fridge, but yanked it back a crack before it shut. The bottles in the door clattered. Oh, do you need water or anything to drink? I've at least got that. I'll take a water bottle. I
Leave
got
it to
you.
me.
Derek snuck his arms through the opening and pulled out a chilled water bottle. He closed the fridge for real and straightened out his stance. You accepted the drink from his hand. The sightseeing moved back into the living room. From there, his fun tidbits there were about which switch turned on which light and how to turn on the fan. And here's the last stop. With a flourish, he pulled open the sliding door that led out to the balcony. Thanks for getting the door. You're welcome. Derek gestured once more to the wide open door. After you? You were losing track of how many doors he'd opened for you already, but you walked through the latest one into the sizzling summer air. The view was even more breathtaking than you'd realized from the living room. You could see the miles, the sea, the sprawling city, and the rolling hills beyond that. Neither of you spoke for a moment. Derek moved past you and leaned against the railing. He started out into the vast world ahead of him. You rested against it too, right next to Derek. He didn't flinch. Derek welcomed your presence with ease. This was the part I was the most into about this apartment. Whatever place I got, I knew it had to have a balcony. Even a small one would have been fine, but this one is amazing. Feeling settled, you slipped at the refreshing water Derek had given you. He pinched his shoulders up and sent a grin your way.
All right.
So that's it, the whole place, unless you actually wanted to see inside my room. The suggestion was given with a coy brow raise and a little laugh. I was looking forward to seeing your room, you joked. Then maybe later. Derek pushed himself up from the bar to stand at his full height. This is such perfect timing. We're both gonna be in this town for Father's Day tomorrow. That was right. You'd be present to spend the holiday in person with the Suarez family. You used to spend that day celebrating with Mr. Holden until you moved away. Over the years, you had grown closer to Mr. Holden, and having him in your life felt completely natural. You knew better than most that he didn't need to be related by blood to be your family. Thanks to him, you eventually had a dad of your own to spend Father's Day with. Mr. Holden was thrilled to have you there for Father's Day celebrations, and that continued until you no longer lived close enough to do it. And you also kept in touch with Mr. Suarez by sending cards. That was just as important. You were grateful to have two great dads who cared for you. You were looking forward to being in the town for the occasion, to say the least. Derek spoke up again to elaborate on the plan. I'll be going to see my dad and everyone else. That's pretty obvious. We're just gonna hang out at their place. I know you might have your own plan with your own dad, but I was thinking that maybe we could have a combination Father's Day get-together. It's so rare that we're all here. It feels like a waste to separate for the holiday. That's why I figured we could invite Mr. Holden over. He loves you, and my dad loves you too. And the two of them are best friends. I doubt they'd have a problem with that as long as you didn't mind meshing your celebrations with us. It's not gonna be a huge party, just going to be my parents' place to hang out. You don't need a gift for my dad either. I got him a tie, and it's not a big deal. I think that'd be a perfect solution. Alright? He rubbed his hand together eagerly. Tomorrow is going to be a great day. And look at me, inviting you to Father's Day directly like a big boy. Derek was so tickled inside and out that he scratched his cheeks and let out a rumbling chuckle. You certainly are a very big boy now. Thanks. His gaze swept over the city once more as his mind began to wander away from where his body was planted on the balcony. Now, it's insane how much time has gone by. It's been, what, 10 years since we first met? Wait. He whispered the words again with a gravity of a long-lost spell. 10 years? It's been 10 years since that first summer we spent together? Derek's voice and deeds sped up faster and faster. He ran a hurried hand through his short hair, stumbling back from the railing. Oh wait, hold on. He couldn't face you anymore. Derek stared hard at nothing with his jaw clenched. It felt impossible then, but it happened. We actually became adults. Time's up. You wanted to be with him, and it had nothing to do with that deal. A flare of long-hidden emotions was pressing against the inside of your chest, fighting to break through. As always, they were undeniable and unignorable. It made your heart race, while your mind swam in a hate-fueled haze. In the fuzzy blur, you could still clearly recall a nice boy you'd never seen before running across the old neighborhood road to properly introduce himself one summer afternoon. You got lost further in memories of bright days spent in Sunset Bird and Person Vista City, and of the countless hours spent talking over the phone when that became the only option. There was no way you could forget how much Derek had done for you over the years and everything you tried to do for him. Though what stuck out most of all was what you did together. You were a team. The reminiscing culminated in a final, sparkling scene that summer and summed up Derek very well in your mind. The moment he proposed to you in his own quite unique way almost exactly a decade ago. He was important to you. He was special to you. Derek himself described the sensation once. You cared about your friends and family, but when you needed a partner, you thought about him. And as that all washed over you, Derek in the present had remained standing in front of you, waiting for something to happen. The topic was not something he took lightly, and he couldn't take the silence. He wanted to hear your voice and spiritlessly prompt you. Faye? That was it. You resolved to tell him what you felt. In preparation for what you were about to do, you took in a deep breath. Derek watched on in anticipation. Actually, I've got a better deal for you. Let's just date each other. You took a step closer to him. It wasn't even something you thought about. You had to be near Derek. He could merely gawk at you in complete and utter disbelief. As carefully as he'd been paying attention, he couldn't process it. You'd actually gone for it. Backtracking now wouldn't work. You could only press forward in the unknown. I know it hasn't been easy for us, and we've been away for a long time, but you've been a part of my life for 10 years, and it means more to me that you've never let things fade than it would have if we saw each other more because of coincidence or luck. This isn't coming from nowhere. I'm sure of what I'm saying and what I feel. Your whole, your whole heart had gone into the admission. Every cell in your body was willing the man in front of you to understand the seriousness of it all. Very unfortunately, his wide-eyed stare remained in place. You couldn't get a hint of what he thought. Perhaps he was lost in flashes of your shared moments, the way you had been before. Whether you were right or wrong, you were the one left in suspense now. Painfully slowly, his stare hardened. His features went from wide open to tight and narrow. Then he opened his mouth, and he closed it again without a single sound. Derek instead pressed a hand to his chin and moved back. He turned away and continued moving. Derek had started to pace. His tempo was marked by firm, wide, quick steps. He swung his arms with two fists back and forth in stiff arcs like a pair out of sync metronomes. He disappeared around the corner edge of the balcony and come back round after he'd reached the wall on the other side. When his path had brought him closer to you once more, he stuck a finger up in the air. Both you and him seemed pretty convinced that he was going to talk that time, but he didn't. The hand dropped, and he went around again. Embarrassment from his blatant struggle added even more frazzled energy to his retreat. Pacing was a typical method of Derek's for working out his thoughts or keeping busy when he didn't want to keep still. Despite that, you couldn't say you had expected this reaction to your emotional vulnerability. Your stomach was twisting it on itself. Finally, while he was at a distant point of his loop, Derek shouted an answer of sorts. This isn't bad news. You didn't do anything wrong. Of course, the first thing that he'd want to do is reassure you, even in a situation like that one you were currently wading through. Derek's important momentum felt perpetual from how badly you wanted to speak with him, but it did help that he hadn't truly forgotten you were here. He steamrolled back towards your direction, self-inflicted and self-directed frustration on his face. Derek marched straight to you and swiveled, at least at the last moment. However, it wasn't a full turn. He only shifted halfway around and flopped himself on top of the balcony railing. Derek ruffled his whole hand, through his short brown hair as if it might get his brain sorted the way he wanted to be. When that wasn't effective, he weakly tilted his face to rest his cheek against the metal frame instead. He stared at the sky out in the distance.
I really messed up.
I really messed this up. The sound of his voice was crushingly defeated. He almost choked on the next words. I'm not good enough. I never have been. His hands gripped the edges so tight he shook. I give up. You gasped. Your thoughts went into lightspeed overdrive, yet Derek was faster. In an instant, he snapped his head up.
No.
No, I don't. Forget I said it. Forget all of this. He pushed himself back to his full height and faced you directly. Faye, if you're not having second thoughts about me, would it be alright if we could do this one more time? You gave a certain nod. He smacked his hands together in a special satisfying clap. Derek wasn't holding back now.
What do you think?
Alright, fresh slate. You and me are on the same side here. We'll make it work. Should I start? Or do you wanna go? You can take this round. Cool. I've got it this time. Derek rolled his shoulders, then stretched his neck from the side to side, and he lastly put on his game face. Faye, there's something I wanted to say. It's something I've thought about for a long time. Yes, I can hear you out. Thanks. Thank you, but first, I've actually got to say something else. It's that you're incredible, and I can always count on you. And when we get together, it's some of the best moments of my life, and I want to be better because of you. And
the truth is,
his words had already moved you deeply. Before taking the ultimate plunge, he threaded his fingers with yours to help ground the both of you.
I love
you, Faye. I really do. And I love you too. You knew it. You had been so certain. You and Derek were partners. Everything about your relationship came down to the way that you supported one another. Despite the struggle to make this leap, and all the time you'd been kept apart, you could still make it. The score was Faye and Derek won. Faye without Derek 0. Derek let out a low laugh with a deep crease in his brow.
Oh man!
Damn, I wasn't prepared for this. For once. There's a first time for everything. He shrugged, and while you didn't frown, his expression twisted with a self-deprecating bend. Derek, are you alright? Derek looked at you through wistful, lidded eyes. It was enough to make the world feel cold, no matter how hot the summer sun was. Honestly, I liked you back then when I suggested that deal. It was hard for me, definitely one of the most monumental things I actually managed to accomplish.
I just.
But as terrifying as it was to offer that deal, it was at least an option. I didn't even consider going the direct route of saying that I liked you. That was per 100% not on the table. It still wasn't. Up, un- up until about 3 minutes ago, anyway. Derek managed to sneak in a cute quip with his actual grin before solemnness caught up to him again. I can't. Yeah, do it. I'm not going anywhere this time. There was still a small tremble in your hand after the roller coaster ride that was admitting you wanted to be with Derek, but you got in line again for another thrill. You gently kissed him instead. You didn't rush, and Derek had enough time to realize your change in method. He was drawn in closer to you and helped close the distance. His lips were so warm. His arms wrapped around you, and he returned your kiss with no hesitancy. It was your first with Derek, and you could only hope it wouldn't be your last. You separated from each other just barely. Your chests stayed flush together, and he had spoken answer too.
I love you.
I love you, Faye. I really do. His words were his words were so moving. You were grateful he was still holding you, though he shifted one hand to cradle your face, and the stability of your knees was tested again. Good work, team. I'm not entirely tense. I knew you cared about me. That meant a lot to young Derek. But that's not the same as being the one who you'd want to share your life with, right? I could tell myself that story, and it made enough sense to get through the day. Part of me was in denial. Maybe you noticed. One brow of his was lifted teasingly on that last line. It got you to crack a smile through the heaviness. That was probably the goal.
I don't
I
deserve
didn't want
that.
to hope I hadn't earned that. He threw his hands up and self-perceived the loose. And so I was entirely boomed to the reserves of by myself. That's why it took a second for what you said to get through this thick skull. Derek, you have so much to offer. You're not just some backup. He smiled. Even though it was apologetic and half-formed, it was still nice to see.
Thank you.
No matter how good and understanding you are, that only made me believe all that stuff about not deserving it more. But that sucks. You lost whether you tried or didn't. And so you did. I'm sorry. I thought about your feelings so badly. Derek was shamefaced. It was something he never wanted you to have to know. That didn't change what you thought about him. Apology accepted, though it took you long enough. Thanks.
You're seriously great.
great. With pure earnestness in a general's voice, he made a new solution. I'm not gonna quit before I've actually tried anymore. Not when you gave me a chance. And then the shrinking Derek and the sober Derek were outshined by the excited Derek you were so familiar with. The two of us didn't need the deal. It was only an excuse, and I'm officially calling it off. We've got a new plan, one that's 1,000% better. He beamed at you with his most confident and dazzling grin. Love you. I love you too. In his enthusiasm, Derek let you go in order to immediately filling himself around you with an even stronger hold. It almost knocked you to the ground. Luckily, you stumbled together and managed to keep you footing. Derek had to lean over you with your legs crossed as if he dipped you in a dance and was laughing the whole time. You were giggling just as much. It was wonderful. He helped get you more upright, but you kept snuggling. You were deliriously giddy. You didn't even know what to do. You might have had to start pacing yourself, but luckily for you, you had an ideas man for a boyfriend. He already had a new direction to take things in.
You doing okay?
So, how tired are you after all that traveling? Because I was thinking, well, if you want, we could go visit our families now. His enthusiasm was palpable, and you felt ensnared by his sparkling green eyes. I know we're gonna see them tomorrow, but there's no law saying we have to wait till then. That idea had you re-energized and ready to hit the road again. The corners of your mouth curled into a sweet grin. I'm definitely not tired enough to pass that up. Awesome. And we do have something that our family should hear about. He let out a single chuckle and bashfully rubbed the back of his neck. That's right. The world needs to know about the brand new partnership of Faye Madison and Derek Suarez. Oh. I never actually told my parents about that deal, the let's get married in 10 years plan. It's okay, I never told my moms either. Then are we pretending that never happened, or? I prefer it if we keep that between us. Is that okay?
I got you.
Totally. No worries. We've already kept that between us for a decade, and we don't have to tell every person we know about our awkward teenage romantic developments. Thanks. That's what I thought too. We can be embarrassing privately. But that said,